Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Code and the Coding Coders Who Code It. I'm your host, Drew Bragg, and I'm joined today once again by Mr. Chris Oliver. Chris, if someone, somewhere, somehow isn't familiar with you, would you please do a brief introduction?
Those people are probably not listening to your podcast.
I would imagine so, but just in case.
I'm Chris Oliver. I run GoRails education for Ruby on Rails developers, Jumpstart, SaaS template for Rails developers, Hatchbox, which is a hosting platform for, you guessed it, Rails developers. And I've been recently working on the Learn Hotwire course with William Kennedy, which has been lots of fun. Probably one of the biggest things I've ever had to put together. Hotwire and Hotwire Native is quite a large topic, I will say. So, and then, of course, co-chair of RailsConf, the very last ever RailsConf.
The very last RailsConf in my hometown of Philadelphia.
Yeah, you got
very
your
excited.
wish.
Yes,
you got your wish.
Yes. It took a lot of running around and annoying a lot of people, but I got my wish.
Yeah.
It
Philly's
worked.
a good city for it.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Very walkable city. But we are going to talk all about that. The typical show format for anyone not familiar with my show is I'm going to ask Chris three questions. Show. I'm going to ask him what he's working on, what kind of blockers he has or recent blocker he had and how he found a solution for it. And I'm going to ask him about something cool, new, or interesting that he's recently learned, discovered. It doesn't have to be coding related, but it can be. So because we have so much to talk about, especially around RailsConf, I want to jump right into what are you working on, but also how's the RailsConf planning going?
Well, I have two secret projects I can't talk about that I am working on, but Learn Hotwire course is not secret. It's basically done, but I have a few videos I want to finish up. And then, of course, as we're wrapping things up, the new Hotwire Native 1.2 came out. So then William was like, I can probably get rid of some videos, actually.
Yeah, there
like,
you go.
Shorten things. And I was like, well, that sounds like a great thing. That is rare. So we're polishing up the course. But in between that and everything else that's going on, just regular day-to-day screencasts for GoRails and all that, RailsConf, that's been fun. I feel like now that we've gotten through the big stuff where we get the submissions in, we go through all those, we get the schedule together. So we flew in and all as a team looked at the rooms and the layout and nearby restaurants and all that stuff and just got a in-person feel for it because you can look at a map and whatever and it's not quite the same as being there.
No, especially Philly has very small city blocks.
Yeah.
I feel like I've gone to other RailsConfs and RubyConfs where it's like, oh, it's only 4 blocks away. That's nothing. And then you walk and you're like, how are we still walking 4 blocks? In Philly, it's like 4 blocks is 5 minutes. It's super easy.
That was nice because on the map, it looked like Reading Terminal Market was a ways. It looked like it could be a 30, 45 minute walk if it was like a different
10.
city, but it was super short to get there and easy. And the scale of the maps, you can't quite tell because you're like, well, I see blocks and LA block is different than New York and Philly and Chicago and wherever. So that was a little strange, but what's nice is they're so small and so you can get anywhere really easily, really fast and stuff. So yeah, that's fun. I feel like a lot of the process is already in play. So me joining as co-chair is kind of last minute, right before like CFP opened and stuff. So they have a lot already planned. Picking the venue and stuff was like already done. So I get to help with the picking you and the rest of the program committee. That stuff was important so that we have a good group.
I'm pretty sure because I picked the city, I was in first.
Yeah. Oh, you were in first.
Yeah. I don't know who else is involved in this, but I know I am. That's all I know.
It's always a critical part of the conferences because that sort of dictates. Get all the CFP, everybody ranks them anonymously, but when we have to go fine tune and finalize everything, that's where your personal preferences and expertise and like what you want to see, what you think the community wants to see, what goes over well because you've witnessed that at previous conferences. And that's what we picked the people. There's 6 people on the program committee.
Yeah, I guess if you just on the programming committee, not including co-chairs, there's 6 of us, which is great.
That's not too small, not too big. If it got to be too small or too big, it could be unwieldy either way. Too much work for too few people, or too many people and they don't agree, it could be a problem too. And so I think it worked out really well.
I'm really happy with the schedule we ended up coming up with. And I'm still like, damn, there are so many great talks that didn't make the cut. It's insane. When I think about every talk that we looked at, I was just like, I want to go to this talk. I want to listen to this talk. I want this talk to happen. And we don't have that many slots. We only have 3 days. It's like, can we make it a whole week since it's the last one, maybe? Because there's so many good talks. But we have a great schedule, I think.
Yeah, it was so tough because it was like basically 1 in 10 submissions were all we could pick. So that meant 9 out of every 10 were not able to be selected, which was hard to whittle them down to that. That was really tough, but I'm looking forward to it. It's one of those where you know that you want to go see one person talk, but then also at the same time, somebody else's talk you want to go to, and you're like conflicted, which is a sign we did a good job.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's how it's always been. How many tracks do we have?
We have
2 or 3?
Three. I want to say 3.
Can't remember. Yeah.
I think it's 3, which is better. I've been to ones where the number of talks at the same time was a little crazy. Maybe I guess much. For videos, for releasing videos, it's nice to have that many more videos. But for attendees, I can't hallway track and attend the 3 talks I want to go to while missing these other 3. I think 3 is very manageable.
Recording the videos is always valuable, but also I feel like it's too easy for them to get lost on YouTube or whatever. And I will say I wanted to go see that talk and I'll watch it afterwards. And then like you get home and life's busy and you forget about it or whatever. So that's one of the reasons why you have to come out to Philly with us so you can be there in person to talk to people.
Absolutely.
And don't miss it.
And sincerely though, like there is definitely something special about seeing a talk in person, live, having someone sit next to you, talking to them about what you guys just witnessed, going afterwards out to the bar or just hanging out in the hotel lobby or whatever. And there's a good chance someone else saw the same topic and you can talk about it, or someone went to a talk that you didn't get to go to and you can talk about it. And when you do that with YouTube videos, it's just not the same. It's too easy to get distracted. You hit the pause button, you walk away. Maybe you don't even start it back. It's seeing it in person. There's something about seeing it live that's special.
Totally. Yeah, I agree. And also like the conference experience is better when the conversation with people is not, what talk did you just go see? You're actually talking about nuanced whatever about the thing you just watched together. So you end up with deeper conversations and stuff, I think, because of that too. And that's incredibly useful and valuable that you just, maybe you do if you two happen to be working on the same project or something. Not quite the same.
Yeah, agreed.
My terminal here says, it just switched. I think it says 54 days left till RailsConf.
54 days. It feels so close and yet so far. There's still so much time. It does feel a long
ways away, but it's really not. Less than 2 months.
I've got Podia Retreat next week, so that's slightly more of my focus. And then when I come back, there's not much more going on between now and then, so that'll become my real focus. I still owe a food guide to Philly. There's so many good places to eat. Trying to come up with a list is like, I don't know where to send people. Like I can tell you where to avoid pretty easily, but telling you where to go is a lot tougher because there are a lot. I gave a preview list and it was already a pretty long list. But Reading Terminal Market is the only guaranteed thing that you have to go eat at least once. If you go to RailsConf, which you should, you got to check out Reading Terminal Market. It is an experience.
Have you seen Drew Bragg's famous red jacket he wears on stage at conferences? Did you know that jacket was dyed with the blood of Node.js developers? Okay, that's not true. But you know what is? JudoScale is the only autoscaler that consistently prevents request timeouts and backed up job queues. It's a better autoscaler because it tracks better metrics, analyzes them more frequently, and is run by a small team of committed devs. JudoScale works with Heroku, Render, Fly, and AWS. Visit judoscale.com to bulletproof your production environment.
There is so many things there to eat. And the only thing I ever want is those damn cookies and a Philly cheesesteak. But every time I walk in, I'm like, there was that turkey place and whatever else. Greek food.
The baked goods are so good too.
Yeah. When Brooke and I were in Philly for your wedding, we went to Amada, which is Chef Jose Garza's Spanish tapas restaurant, which was phenomenal. So if anybody looks for a like fancier dinner, that was fantastic.
That's what I'm trying to do with the list, is break it down to like, this is fancy. This is, you can go in with your backpack. This is fast. This is not fast. This is,
you have to take your hat off here, sir.
Yeah. I didn't even know I was wearing it.
This happened in Sin City Ruby in Vegas.
I was wearing a ball cap because I'm always wearing a hat of some kind because I never get haircuts at regular intervals. And then I go, oh, I can't go out in public like this. And we went to a very fancy steakhouse and I was wearing my hat. And the first thing the guy said to us was, you can't wear your hat in here, sir. I was like, oh, this is going to be an expensive dinner.
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious. The rest of our clothes was like t-shirts and shorts or whatever, but
the hat did not improve the overall vibe of our group. I think Irina was the only one that looked presentable out of our group, but she always looks presentable. So that was a very fun conference, and also a last conference. So I'm glad we got to do that one.
Although I heard some rumblings that maybe it just needs to be closer to home or something.
To be honest, I think it would lose a lot of its magic if it wasn't in Vegas. I think that is part of the draw. Even if you're not like a gambler or a big crowds person, like Vegas has something. It's really easy to get outdoors. We went to Red Rock Canyon on the Saturday after. We went to a Knights game and we did some people watching and a little bit of gambling just because why not? You're in Vegas, but got a ton of good food and stuff. And I don't know, there's not many places quite like that you could have a conference. So I think in order to still be Sin City Ruby would need to stay in Vegas.
I just like the size and the vibe where it was so casual. You could heckle the speaker if you want. Like that kind of vibe to the conference was really special, I think. And you could do that anywhere. It just reminded me of like Southeast Ruby and stuff that Jason put on back when it was 100 people and just small and an intimate group of people. That was special. So yeah, sad that Sin City Ruby is over, but hopefully Jason Sweat keeps something going.
Definitely bring it to Detroit. So it'll be a different conference, but he could still do a small gathering conference, and being outside of Vegas probably will help with costs of things because
a little bit.
Vegas.
Yeah. You don't have the asbestos ridden casino to have the low prices at.
Yeah, we won't unfortunately have a hockey game for RailsConf, being that it's in July, but you can go catch a Phillies baseball game if you're into live sports. That's a
sports ball.
Everything in Philly is very close to where we're going to be. Like we're going to be center city perfectly, and nothing's a far
Go
Uber.
see the Liberty Bell and whatnot.
Independence Hall. We got the art museum with the Rocky steps and the Rocky statue. If you've ever seen the movie Rocky, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, figure your life out. Go check it out.
Yeah, there's so much real close by. Good city for it. I'm glad that you convinced them to do it. Lots of Philly cheesesteaks that are in my future. So
yeah, people are going to be cheesesteaked out by the end of it, but it'll be well worth it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think you were the pioneer of, was convincing us to get people out into the city for lunch, which I think same thing with Sin City Ruby. And I think that's how it worked in tropical on rails as well. We all went out on the town, and you got an hour or 2 hours, whatever it was, and go actually experience the city a little bit. Usually you're flying in straight to the hotel and then to the conference venue, which is also the hotel. And then like at night, you might get to see a little bit, but that's about it. I think that is a really awesome call to make, to say like, let's go experience the city. We're not all from Philly, so maybe you've never been there before. Maybe you've only been there briefly. This will still be a brief time. You won't have tons of time to explore unless you add a few extra days, but at least you get to go see Reading Terminal Market. And what was that brewery we walked to? That was fun.
Victory Brewing. There's a few good breweries to eat at and chill, and just great restaurants. And yeah, that was something that we talked a lot about at RubyConf in Chicago. Was Philly has so many good spots for food. And I'm not saying that the hotel food is going to be bad, but it's not going to be representative of Philly. Let's let people go for lunch. Let them go to Reading Terminal, go get a cheesesteak, go hang out. Rocky Mountain Ruby, Blue Ridge Ruby, Sin City Ruby, like they've all done that. And it's been one of my favorite parts about going to those smaller conferences is you're in this cool town, but you're stuck in this building the whole time. I don't want people to come to Philly and just be stuck in the Sheraton the whole time. Sheraton's fine. The conference is going to be awesome, but there's so much about Philly to experience. Let's get them out more. But yeah, to your point of like, if you add a few days on, I will say like, if you can swing it, you should definitely come in the weekend before, because the weekend before 4th of July is a Friday, and holy crap, Philly throws a party for 4th of July. We have the Liberty Bell, we have Independence Hall, like so much stuff happened.
Fitting.
Yeah. Yeah. You have not experienced 4th of July until you've experienced it in a place like Philadelphia. So if you can swing it, come out the weekend before and get your city in then. It will be well worth it, I promise.
That's a really good point. I assume they do fireworks on the water there.
Oh, yeah.
Like they did
They
with
have fireworks on Penn's Landing, which is right on the water. They do fireworks at the Art Museum. The Art Museum just lights up. It's awesome. There's tons of cool places on the Parkway to like just chill and watch. Yeah, it is a huge party. The whole city is just on fire. It's great. Yeah, super cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Penn's Landing was where we were when we were down for New Year's after your wedding and saw the fireworks down there. It was cool.
They go a little harder for 4th of July, but yeah, it's similar vibes. Yeah, Penn's Landing's super cool. It's a little bit further away from the Sheraton than like a lot of the other stuff I'm suggesting, but it is a really cool place to like walk and hang out and be outside and on the water, and that's a great place to go and hang, especially middle of the week. Won't be super crowded.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm trying to think of like other stuff that we did for organizing. Ruby Central does so much of that. And as co-chairs, we're kind of more for guiding the general direction. We're not dealing with contracts with the venue.
Yeah,
and all that.
Luckily,
thank God.
Right? Yeah, I will have a lot more to do as we get a little bit closer. And once it happens, you'll be on stage doing introductions. I'll be on stage doing introductions. Someone will be running around like a headless chicken trying to fix something. There will be water. Don't worry. We'll have water. Yes. We know we'll have water. That will not be a problem ever again. But yeah, right now it's get hyped because it's coming and it's going to be awesome and super exciting. So many people are coming, like even people that we haven't seen in a few years, just for whatever reason, they don't go anymore or this, that, the other thing.
There's a deliberate effort put into bringing people who have been historically part of the community and making sure that they are very encouraged to come back and celebrate as the last RailsConf and stuff. So I'm loving the theme that we landed on of the past, present, and future of Rails. And there's so much cool stuff to look back on. I always forget this. When was the first year of RailsConf?
RubyConf was 2006, right?
It doesn't look like there was a 2005. So
well, that's when, 5 is basically when Rails came out. So that'd be a little crazy to.
So 2006 must have been the
2006
first one.
Almost 20 years.
That's pretty wild. You know, what's fascinating is how much has changed in 20 years and all the people that have come and gone and been a core part of the community, and then they move on to something new. And it's been fascinating because we haven't even experienced all of that. We've only been around since we started. And so there's
only a few years.
Quite a few years that we missed. And probably DHH is the only one who's experienced all of it. We're a really early crew like Toby. So yeah, I think it'll be fun. Like Aji's keynote of keynotes.
Aji's keynote's going to be great. Yeah, the keynote of keynotes.
It's
fitting
stuff
title.
like that. You start reading the CFP for it and you're like, oh, this is sweet. Can't wait.
I think we did a really good job too balancing those types of talks, the past and maybe a little bit of the future, celebrating Rails, maybe not completely from a technical. We have good ones that like go into some of the technical aspects while still being a past, present, future theme, but then also just having really good technical talks that people are going to walk away learning stuff from.
Yeah, we were all very deliberate about choosing technical talks this year. If you had to choose between two, you'd pick the more technical one in general, I think, as what we landed on, which is good because that's what I've felt sometimes in the past. Felt like, wish we had more technical deep dives into internals of something or other. And that I think we landed on really well, but also those that are looking back on in interesting ways of like, what's the retrospective of active resource? That was a thing. Then it got removed. Why? And talking about those things and all the stuff that the community as a whole has learned over the years, that's really valuable. Webpacker was a cool idea at a time, but now it's not. And thinking about where was the community at the time, what was the problems, and that was a solution. It didn't last, but understanding the progression of things and how it went helps you think about how things will go in the future. What do we need? What's next? Where do I contribute? Yada, yada. So I like that stuff a ton, and I'm excited for those just as much as I am for like the technical talks on how to do X, Y, and Z with, or how the internals of this feature in Rails works. Always like those.
It was very almost clear once we started really picking and choosing the technical talks. That's going to be a great one for a beginner, a junior, someone maybe newish to Rails to come in and go, I don't actually know how to use this well. I can go to this talk and get a really good primer on it. Next step up of like a little more complex, a little bit more of a deep dive. And then we have the really, hey, what's going on under the hood? Like, how does this thing actually work in Rails? And what are all the design iterations that happen to get us here? So it's like something for everybody on the technical side, really fun talks around those technical bits. It's such a good schedule. I don't mean to harp on it so much, but I'm really excited. Is. Like I'm a hallway track guy. That's usually what I do at conference. I maybe go to one or two talks and otherwise I'm in the hallway. This time I'm like, I'm going to go to so many talks. There's so many good ones. When you're at breaks in production, you want to quickly understand and fix it, not sift through logs for the next hour. That's where Honeybadger comes in. Honeybadger notifies you of errors, outages, and performance issues as they occur and helps you respond instantly when your systems go down. When you need to dig deeper, Honeybadger's advanced query engine helps you reach into your logs and grab just the information you need. With error tracking, performance and uptime monitoring, log management, and support for over 10 languages, Honeybadger is the best tool to gain real insight into your application's health and performance. Best of all, it's free to get started, and setup takes less than 5 minutes. Be sure to check out honeybadger.io. That's www.honeybadger.io. And thank you to Honeybadger for their continued support of the show.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to balance. I'll probably do my usual of like, I really want to go to this talk, but I know I can watch it later. So
Well, your biggest problem is you are a celebrity. So you walk down the hallway and people go, hold on, I want to talk to you. I'm slightly less of a celebrity, so I don't have as much of that.
It is strange. Not a celebrity anywhere else. For the 3 days or whatever, I'm a celebrity. It's kind of weird. I always get the most out of that because that's the friendships that like, yo, after the conference, let's hop on Zoom and dig deeper into X, Y, or Z that we were talking about and just build those long friendships. I have to default to doing that, but that's been so much fun because, yeah, it's made so many good friendships. And here I am, went to this guy's wedding.
And that's also essentially how Remote Ruby was born. It was just you and Jason hanging out.
And then in Vegas, and here we are.
Yeah.
But yes, totally. It was exactly that, how we met. Andrew just hung out at our table one year, and then Jason and I just randomly met at RailsConf, even though I didn't go. And
right.
Yeah. So it's a fitting city. I feel like Chicago could have been a fitting city for the last one if it wasn't just
we just did RubyConf there. And we've never had one in Philly. None. Neither.
Yeah.
No Rails, no RubyConf has ever happened in Philly, which is a crime. That was my whole platform when I was running around. So we're going to fix it for the last one.
Yeah, the only reason Chicago would have been cool is just to full circle back from the very first one being in Chicago, but the actual location doesn't matter that much. Philly is going to be phenomenal. That's the thing. Just find a great city to be in where people will have fun together, and that's it. So
yeah,
I still think about how much fun RubyConf San Diego was on the resort, sitting by the fire pit. I could have just done that alone for 3 days, hang out by the fire pit. You find the spot with the right atmosphere or whatever, and that's it. Just get people together. They'll have a good time.
The people are what make it great, no matter what the location is. And there's going to be so many people there to celebrate. We have great speakers, but the additional guests coming because it's the last one, people from the community that have left or are on to other things, them showing up, and then there's so many people pumped and like, I'm going to do everything I can to get to the last RailsConf. It's going to be a big one and it's going to be a big party. And I'm super excited to have everybody and go through it.
And I think it's probably helpful for Ruby Central to just do RailsConf this year. And then they're down to one to focus on. If you or your employer wants to sponsor, I think they'll still happily accept new sponsors. So reach out to whatever email address is for Ruby Central. I'm sure it's on the RailsConf.com website. That's been incredibly great too, because I think you were part in saying Power Home Remodeling is a big company that uses Rails here in Philly, and they were
huge company does Rails.
They were excited to get involved in everything, and that's another cool thing is the conference can be in a city like Philly, and then it's like, well, what are the cool Rails shops here that we could show off or whatever and support? And I think that's special. It's another really cool thing, and hopefully like the traveling circus gets to go to every small fun town. I'd love people to come to St. Louis or Kansas City again at some point. So
you got to get on Ruby Central and let them know you want to help make it happen. That's what I did. I was just annoying to the point where they couldn't ignore me anymore. And then I have a phone call from the director of Ruby Central. I'm like, there's only one reason why this guy is calling me right now. And it was to tell me that they were doing it in Philly. And I was jumping on my couch and freaking out my dog. And I was pumped. I'm excited to have one. I'm a little bummed in a way because I do really like going to a new city and traveling like getting to go to Denver was super cool. And every time it's somewhere new, I'm like, cool, I get to go experience the city. I get to go find out this place that I probably wouldn't have gone to otherwise or may not have had the opportunity to. So this is a little weird because I'm like, I'm in Philly like every other weekend. So it's not really that, but I get to impart some of my like, yeah, I'm in Philly almost every other weekend. So here's something cool. Here's a great place to go climbing. Here's a great barcade or whatever it might be.
You got your rental tour bus and, you can take us around town and give us the fake history of Philly?
Sure. Yeah. This is a place where I did that. This is where my boot camp was. It's not there anymore, but yeah.
In general, organizing the conference as a co-chair has been very easy because Ufuk and the Ruby Central team know what they're doing. So I've been able to contribute my opinion whenever useful and stuff. And yet I haven't had to get into the weeds of anything really. I feel like they've gotten so much organized, so much done, all of the reaching out to people and saying, here's the process. You accept your talk and then this happens. If you want mentorship or advice on your talk, here's how to sign up for that and whatever. Like there's so much stuff done already, which has been amazing because it's a lot of work to put on one of these conferences. There's, I don't know how many people working on this, and I'm just glad I can help, wherever I can. And we just want to make this as best of the final RailsConf as we can. But also I'm like, geez, thank goodness you didn't just dump this all on us, because I don't know how we would end up doing it all. It's wild.
Yeah, that's something I'm really excited for from Ruby Central is their new initiative to support regional conferences. Since they won't be doing 2 conferences, they've got the resources to make conferences happen. They've got all this experience making conferences happen. There is a lot more regionals popping up, but it's hard to put on these conferences. It takes a lot of time and effort, and there's a lot of risk and liability. And if you've never done one before, it can be daunting. So to have something like Ruby Central be able to come in and help you with so much of the logistics, so much of the, here's what you need, here's your checklist, here's how we can help. That's going to be such a great addition to the community and help so many more regionals come up and actually happen, and not just be someone's dream to someday host this
lose
thing.
A ton of money for
that too. Yeah, I won't have to get up and be an auctioneer.
That was such a
on the spot.
I am so happy that worked out so well at Sin City Ruby, because you hear from pretty much everybody who's tried to organize their own conference, they lost thousands of dollars every time. That's not going to get them to continue going forever. It's got to be sustainable. And I'm sure they don't care that much to make a ton of money from it. They just want it to be sustainable. They don't want to lose 5 or 10 grand or whatever just a few days to hang out with friends.
For sure.
So that kind of stuff is really useful, whether it's advice on how to deal with contracts or what venues to look at or whatever it is. That stuff alone will save your bacon if you ever think about doing something and want to. I'd love to do something here in St. Louis or somewhere around here at least. And I would definitely look towards that because, yeah, I'm sure if I knew somebody who was an event organizer or whatever, but how expensive a wedding is. And it's conference is that, if not more, if not double. Good Lord. Yeah, it's too much of a gamble. And that's what you're trying to mitigate there, is make it sustainable, make it something you can do every year, or at least not lose a ton of money.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I am very excited for Ruby Central to start doing that in addition to everything else they do. I definitely early on in my career did not have a great appreciation for Ruby Central because I didn't quite understand their role in our community. And now that I'm a lot more senior and I see what they've done, I've peeked behind the curtain and I know how much easier my life is because of them. I'm so grateful for them and everything they do.
Same. Couldn't agree more. I'd hear the name Ruby Central and stuff, and then you can go to a conference or see videos after RailsConf. It's not RailsConf by Ruby Central. It's RailsConf. I didn't even put 2 and 2 together for the longest time for that reason too. And I was like, whoa, I'm glad to help support as much as possible now, because I had no idea what they were doing for us as a community and stuff. So agreed wholeheartedly, and encourage everybody else to support, attend the conference, stay at the conference hotel. Those things were little details that we wanted to make sure we emphasize this year too, because I'd go to a conference and then it's cheaper to stay somewhere nearby. And when budgets were tight, I was like, well, I'm going to have to do that. But at a certain point, I had no idea that the conference has a contract with the hotel to sell a certain amount of rooms and food and beverage and stuff like that. They are having the conference at a hotel because they're trying to sell hotel rooms. So you actually help support the conference a lot if you stay at the conference hotel. I never knew that until somebody mentioned it offhand. I was like, that makes so much sense, but why did it never cross my mind until now? And it's funny how those things you could probably take for granted easily if you've been on the team at Ruby Central organizing conferences year after year. That's just how it works. As attendees, we have no idea what goes into it half the time. I had no idea how hard it would be to rank 250 talks against each other. That was exhausting and so tough.
And it's so important for Ruby Central not to lose money on the conferences, not just because like, oh, hey, we want a good conference and we want it to happen more, but like when Ruby Central makes money off of a conference, which let's be clear, like these conferences are fundraising efforts. These are not marketing events like maybe Rails World is more of like a hype train. Get the Rails Foundation loses money on this, but that's sort of the point. This is a fundraising effort for things like Ruby Gems and Bundler and things we use every day, and the security of those things and the performance of those things that's very easy to take for granted. We used to like use curl requests to download someone else's Ruby code onto our system. Like that's the pre-Ruby Gems days. I don't want those dark ages anymore. I don't want to have to think about, oh, what if one of these gems that I rely on is hijacked? Ruby Central takes care of the security. They make sure Bundler works and works really well and fast, but they need to make money at these fundraisers, which are conferences. Yeah, so get the hotel room, talk to your boss, get them to pay for the ticket.
That's, I think, another helpful thing to convince your employer to send you to RailsConf or RubyConf is you are going to get an awesome experience at the conference, make friends, learn tons of things, have people that you can reach out to afterwards because you met me or Drew or anybody there and we talked about some interesting issue you have at work. We would love to help out if there's any advice we could give you or whatever after the conference and stuff. There's that, which is sometimes a little bit hard to convince your boss that spending money so that you don't work for 3 days, or realistically more like 5 days, because if the conference is Tuesday through Thursday, then you're traveling Monday, traveling Friday, you lose a full work week. So that's kind of tough, I think, as a sell sometimes for employers, but also telling them that not only are we going to learn a bunch while we're there and be more involved in the community and have more support from the community, but we are also supporting Ruby Gems and Bundler. And the longevity of that is awesome. And I think a great way to think about it too. Every piece of this, we are just supporting the future of Ruby in general, which is critical. We get so much from big companies like Shopify and GitHub and whatever, but like you don't want to be dependent on just one or two large companies from sponsoring and stuff. Like the individuals, the small businesses and all of that are what really keep it sustainable. Because if one, God forbid, goes out of business or whatever, like there's still plenty of people there to support and whatnot. And then maybe new startups spin up on Ruby and Rails and they give back and whatever. That is what keeps it going and keeps it from being a rocky situation where you don't want them to be on the brink of, like during COVID, I'm sure it was impossibly hard to work through for the events. And that is also funding the future of Ruby Gems and Bundler and all that. So scary situations like that can be mitigated by us all supporting them.
You're right. It is a bit of a tough sell to your boss. A good way potentially to frame it is, especially early on in my career, I got so much benefit from attending, not just because I would go to a talk and I'd learn something, but like it's kind of like learning a different language. Like the best way to get better at the language that you're trying to learn is to go to that country, right? Be completely immersed and surrounded by it. A lot of us are remote workers. Maybe we don't even have that large of a team, but even if we do, it's a lot of Slack conversations and not in person. But you get to come to this in person. You get to talk to people about work adjacent things. I always left Ruby and RailsConf early in my career, like so excited for my next week of work. I want to write more Ruby. Like I want to get better at this. It was such a career accelerator for me early on. And now it's just such a great way of, now I know this person. Now I know that person. I was introduced to this. I've texted you or Jason Sweat out of the blue, like, hey, I'm not bothering one of my coworkers with this. Have you ever had to do this? Point me in the right direction. We don't need to have a full-blown conversation. Just point me in the right direction. Like that kind of stuff is so valuable. It's not, oh, go and you'll get a job because of the networking. It's like, no, you go and you'll get resources because of the networking. You'll meet people who have different experiences than you and different expertises than you. And that's going to make you a better developer, which is going to benefit your company in the long term.
Totally. Every single conference I come back from, I'm like fired up. I always am like, I should go build that thing that I've been wanting to for a long time. And it always gives me so many good ideas of like, wow, I could go back and refactor this or that, or have a new approach for this other thing. And it's always like intangible things. You can't come into RailsConf or RubyConf knowing those things specifically will happen, but they will. They will be random conversations that you end up talking about namespaces or whatever. And you're like, oh, I think that could fix our whole major issue of like our architecture at work on this problem. You never would have known that that was going to be what you walk away with. But those are the invaluable things that you can go get all this knowledge dump from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other Ruby developers. And that is all over 3 days. And you come back home and you're like, I need to build a Ruby gem for this thing. And we can refactor this at work and yada, yada. That alone, I think, is worth the price of entry. The rejuvenation, being in person with people, work remotely, too much. Just me and the dog for way too much of the day, every day. So I'm excited. I can't wait. It's only 54 days away as we're recording this, at least.
Yeah, as we're recording this, it'll be even closer once it is released in June. So
yeah, get your tickets, get out there, come visit us, come say hi.
Come visit Philly. It'll be great.
And we will have a podcast
panel. Yeah.
So
yeah, you can come see this nonsense happen live, raw and unedited, because Paul does an amazing job making us sound so much better at this than we actually are.
That was fun. Paul actually came to RailsConf in Atlanta that one year.
Yeah, that was great to meet him. I was still pretty new at this. He gave me a big hug, and I'd used him for like 5 episodes at that point, but he was already like this really great friend. He was just such a cool dude, always had unsolicited but great advice. And I'm like, I don't pay you enough for everything you do for me for this podcast, for this show. He's so great.
Yeah, shout out Paul and his wife, the best. Yeah, we got very lucky with them. But yeah, also that's a good time. Come out, and if you want to start a podcast, come ask us questions, whatever. More podcasts, the better.
Absolutely. There's so many people to interview and so many topics to cover. And this show is so much different than Remote Ruby, which is so much different than the Ruby on Rails podcast, which is different than the Bike Shed. And I could just keep naming podcasts all day, but like they're all just a little bit different enough that even if the guest is the same, the content ends up being different. Constantly listening. So
it's like school. Like you'll really latch on to a certain teacher at school because the way they explain things really fits how your brain works or whatever. Same thing goes with podcasts. This person I really, really understand and like and whatever. So there's always room for more, I think. The more the better, especially in a community like Ruby that is decently sized, but still tiny compared to like JavaScript. And even probably Python at this point, because Google and the Python community there is pretty massive. Like we need to spread the word of Ruby more. And so if you want to do any of that, we'd be happy to chat and help you get launched or whatever it is.
Yeah, sort of know what I'm doing now. I've done this a couple of times.
Your 50th episode came out today?
50th episode will be next week recording this. So May 20th will be my 50th, actually closer to my 60th episode, but like live at Rails World wasn't a full episode. Live at RailsConf, or, I had a few bonus episodes. So like they count. So I'm technically over that, but like that's the 50th. The title is episode 50, Adam Fortuna. So
amazing.
Yeah, that is the 50th.
It's a big milestone, man. Congrats.
Yeah, it's cool. I never shocked I hit it.
What's your release schedule on those? Can't remember.
I try to do it twice a month. Sometimes life gets in the way.
Well over a year then.
It's longer. So when I started, I was once a month. And then I went to twice a month. And I've missed a month or a week here and there because like Remote Ruby, especially when it was the three of you, like one of you drops, you've still got a show. Two of you drop, as long as you have a guest, you still have a show. For my show, like it's me and whoever I have coming on. I have to be available. And then I also have to have a guest. So like there's been misses here and there. It's not as easy without a co-host, but I also am not organized enough to instill this on anyone else.
It's so much harder to coordinate once you have co-hosts. So yeah, but that's amazing, man. It's the hamster wheel that's easy to like, I don't want to do this week. And you don't have anybody else expecting you to be there unless it's a guest that you've scheduled. So then you're like, maybe I do skip this week. And it's the grind. It's the same grind as, you got to get to the gym or whatever and take your medicine, whatever, all those things that you're like, I have to do this consistently. And what is most important is that I do it, not how good was this episode compared to the last one. Was it better? That doesn't matter. You just got to be there consistently. And then magically they end up getting better all the time.
I had to listen to one of my earlier episodes because I was trying to remember something. And I was just like, good Lord, is that what my episodes used to be like? What the heck? It's terrible. So and it also used to be a very expensive hobby because I like paid for this and paid for Paul and all this stuff. And luckily now Honey Badger and Judo Scale are amazing sponsors and sponsor the show and let me do it without my wife going, you're spending how much on this stupid hobby now? So yeah,
thanks, Paul.
Yeah, thank you for making this so much easier.
Thanks, Josh and Ben and Adam.
Yeah, and Adam and big time thanks. Well, I also get to thank Adam at least once a month when I get my automated Judo Scale email for Podia. And it's like, you saved this many thousands of dollars this month. And I go, thanks, Adam. Because that means Podia has more money to send us to in retreats or something. What an awesome product Judo Scale is. And Honey Badger too. It just, Honey Badger's a little less about here's how much you saved and more of like, you get to catch this exception earlier and fix it and save yourself money by not having downtime, which is great.
Well, and you guys being a platform like that, something like Judo Scale is pretty much invaluable because you don't know when somebody's going to launch a major sale or something. You do know when Black Friday is coming up, but you don't know how big Black Friday will be. So Judo Scale really saves your bacon, I'm sure.
Huge.
Insane.
Yeah.
That's
big
great.
Time. Big time. But continuing with the episode, as it should be, blockers. I know you have secret projects that we're not talking about. Is there any blockers that you currently have or anything from like the Hotwire course that you want to talk about?
I've got 3 or 4, maybe 5 lessons on testing for the Hotwire course that I want to do. And those are tricky because, of course, it's JavaScript and system tests suck.
Yes, they do.
Recently, I can't explain this either, but recently, the test suite for Jumpstart Pro failed with one test, but it just became consistent all of a sudden. And it was because our fixture used the password as password, obviously. And that was in some data breach, of course. But apparently the data breach includes that email and password or whatever combo, which is like test@example.org or something. And so now the test suite runs headless Chrome. It takes a screenshot when it fails. It goes and fills out the login, submits the form, and then it's waiting for the next page to show like the dashboard or something. Well, that never gets there. And then it takes a screenshot. Here you go. This is what we got stuck on. And it's like the empty login page. And it never shows because this is one of those like browser modals that shows up when you log in and it's like, hey, we found your password in a breach recently. That doesn't actually show up in headless Chrome at all. There's no way to turn it off either. So I've been like, yeah, screw system tests. But for something like the Hotwire course, if you want to test turbo frames or something like that, you really need to do that, because if you don't wire it up right, it'll work. The request will work, but it might not grab the frame from the next page because that might be missing. And you need to then check for the JavaScript to insert content missing or whatever, add an error to the console or whatever. So I want to talk about some of that stuff, but also there was some really cool little details that I want to get into in the weeds a bit, where if you're using Hotwire and you're using things like TurboStream from, which basically on the page load will then use a web component to connect to the Action Cable channel. What's really cool is there are test helpers for that. So you can load it in the headless browser, but you're doing automated testing. So it's running as fast as possible, which means the page will load and then you will do stuff before the WebSocket actually connected. So the test helper is actually really slick. It looks for all of those tags in the HTML and then just waits until the connected attribute appears on them. So then that ensures that every single one of the TurboStream source tags is weighted until it's actually connected on the back end. So if you want to test a broadcast, you just add this little one-liner and it looks a little bit like magic, but we'll go into the internals and show you how that works. And it's like, oh, I could have written that myself. I don't have to, thank goodness. But now that I actually see that the implementation of this method is like 1 line, 3 lines of code, something tiny, you're like, oh, this is cool. I can use this now to think about how to write my own tests for my own stimulus controllers or something. That pattern you learn from that teaches you ways to write your own custom stimulus controllers or other web components or whatever in a Hotwire manner. I just need to sit down and have some time to record those. Hopefully next week. I said that the last 2 weeks, and personal family stuff has come up and allergies have been killing me and other things. And so I've been a little behind, but it's awesome. You look at the source code for some of the stuff in Rails and you're like, there's no way that's as simple as that is. And sometimes that's the case. And it's like, it's actually quite complicated what this one little thing does. But other times you look at the test helper and you're like, are you serious? It just looks for these tags and waits for the connected attribute to show up. And then it continues and that's it. Oh, that's cool. That's really creative. I don't have to put a stupid sleep 5. We've done that before. I'm sure all of us have done that at one point or the other. And that's okay as a solution. But if it ever runs faster than 5 seconds, which it always should generally, this way is just more or less going to poll until that shows up. And so then it's still going to be as fast as possible, which you always want your test suite to be as fast as possible, especially the dang system tests that are slow. So I'm very excited to dig into some of that stuff. I just think that half the battle with Turbo is understanding the mindset you need to be in and then understanding those little nuances of, oh, this is how I should think about it. Can take it from being this framework where you're like, I don't know, I feel like we should switch to inertia and use React and whatever else. You see that all the time. And it usually comes from that where they don't fully understand Hotwire and how it's implemented and how to work with it. And so the easier thing is I'll just go throw it away and use something else. And that's not how you should approach it. If you run into a challenge, this is your opportunity to understand how it works and why it works that way. But that can be tough unless you have someone who knows how to give you that answer. Because sometimes you can look at it for a month and still be like, I still don't know how the hell this works. So yeah, my goal is to do that, talk about a little bit about the controller tests too, which have some they have some value too, because you can write those way faster if you were just doing something where it's, I submit a form and then I like replace this thing on the page, replace the form with a new fresh copy of it, for example. If that's all you're doing, don't write a freaking system test for it. Just ask the response, did you include a TurboStream tag for a replace or an update or even a visit or whatever? And the thing that's blocking me lately has just been, I'm going to sit down and write those sort of examples to show off and then record it 15 times until I get it right. And then if you sit that project down for too long and you try to come back to it, it's been 2 or 3 weeks now. It's hard to come back to that and remember where you were at and the little details and like, oh, I was going to do this and that and whatever. And I hadn't written it down and it was in my head in fine grained detail at the time, but I didn't write all those thoughts down.
Yeah, it's dangerous to leave things in your head without putting them down in some way. Yeah, done that before. We're releasing a new soon, TM, in air quotes, soon, releasing a new checkout flow at Podia, and a whole bunch of back-end stuff is changing, like really big architecture changes. And we want to make sure like this new checkout's good. So I've been tasked with kind of writing an automated test suite for it. And oh man, it's got to be system tests. There's so many different moving parts and components, and like things have to change when you select different plans for a thing. What if you already have it? What if you're a customer from the EU? Are we applying VAT tax correctly? What if you're in Canada and you've got 2 different tax lines and like with a discount? So much stuff. And then of course, does it work with Stripe? Does it work with PayPal? Like, can you actually purchase the thing? It's been a lot. So when you're like, system tests suck, I was like, yeah, I know. Trust me, I know. They're super valuable. We've caught so many good bugs with it, stuff that just no one had tried this combination in a minute. We didn't realize it broke when we did X, Y, or Z. Now we've got an automated test. We'll know if we break it again. We were able to fix it, find other things. We've caught a lot of edge cases of like, hey, actually, if the server takes a while to respond and we do something while this form is submitting, like we don't actually disable that button. If we hit it too fast, weird shit happens. I wouldn't have found that if I was just clicking around. I wouldn't have clicked that fast, but the test runs fast enough. It's like, oh, once that button's able to be pressed, press it. But we didn't disable it while we were submitting this other form. So the tool just hit the button. Whoa, this coupon wasn't applied or this total wasn't correct. And that kind of stuff has been super valuable to catch also. So it's like they're a pain in the ass, but they are pretty freaking valuable.
If it wasn't so hard to debug them, that's still probably the biggest issue with them. It's doing stuff. I can't see it because the other half of it is like, well, I can pause it after a request happens, but I can only inspect the HTML in the browser. I can't see it unless I switch to non-headless Chrome. And that sometimes is just so annoying because you're like, I need to see what the hell is happening and slow it down. And then sometimes you'll slow it down and then it works. And you're like, wait a minute, what? The flakiness is probably the worst.
Yeah, I've been using Playwright because of the flakiness that we were getting from Selenium. And Playwright has video recording built in. So whenever I'm like, oh, this isn't working correctly, I can just rerun the test with the record mode turned on. To be fair, these are not actual tests because I can't get Stripe to work in our test environment. So this is actually my development environment. And it's just using Playwright as a browser automation tool, calling it a test. And like my assertions are just basically this, my own little concoction. But like the record mode is super cool.
You reminded me, because I was going to say something when you were talking about payments. I had really nice tests for system tests back when Stripe was like the card element, and that's all there was. But then I tried to keep that going when we moved to like Stripe checkout, and checkout is embedded, but it depends on the configuration of your Stripe account, what even shows up. And then they change the UI every few months. And I was like trying to keep that going. And then like for Jumpstart, we have people in the EU and whatever. And it's like, it's defaulting to Ideal or some other payment method or something that we don't even have here. So I can't even write my freaking tests to do that. And I was like, yeah, screw it. This stuff I will run through manually and trust that. And at this point, the embedded Stripe checkout is simple enough. If I know that we created a Stripe checkout session with the right arguments, that's all I need to know, because literally we hand it off to the JavaScript and they redirect us when it's done. And that's it. There's not much for me to actually test anymore. It would be nice to have a full end-to-end situation going there, but now I can more or less just trust that, yes, our JavaScript is like nothing anymore. And I manually tested it. No, it still works. And then the system test can more or less go away, because the unit test or controller test can just, hey, let's stub out this request to the Stripe checkout session. And if it works, it works. Good.
We have a lot of those too, but there's just something about there's
really
so many extra complicated steps of like, the creator has created this type of product. We want to make sure that you can click the button, go to this screen. They fill out this information. So much stuff changes. You can do PayPal checkout or Stripe checkout. If it was a little simpler, sure, code. We could just do a controller test for it. But
you've got a lot of complexity because you're the platform level. And
one-time payments, payment plans, subscriptions. It's a lot.
It's a mess. And it's one of those things that you think would be so much simpler or have been figured out by now, that everybody needs to accept payments. Why isn't this just easy? And it's like, well, it turns out that global payments are an absolute nightmare. If you only wanted to accept credit cards, it's actually not too bad. That's pretty much been solved by Stripe forever, but now you got to deal with tax and shipping addresses and whatever else. And then, you want to accept such and such. Well, it's like a confirmation that takes 2 days for the bank to approve or whatever. And it's like, so we just put you in limbo for 2 days, I guess, and then provision your account later, or we do it now and then we revoke it in 2 days if it doesn't actually go through. And then so many of those things are like, well, either we have to decide as the platform how that's going to work, or we let the customer decide. And then if we let the customer decide, we have to support both options and test against both options. And then you end up with so much complexity, which that's exactly what you have to deal with as a platform like that, because you're trying to serve everybody.
Yeah, everybody all over the globe, and so many configuration options. But yeah, it's nice to have it. It is. It's been
good
fun.
Job security.
For sure. Yeah, I'm uniquely positioned at Podia now. I'm the one and only person with an automated test suite for our checkout, because no one else can run it. I'm working on that, getting it so that everybody can run it. But right now it kind of is dependent on my developer environment. But it's baby steps, fixing all the bugs I've found thus far. So those will be cool. Tests and videos will be good. The wrap-up question, my favorite. And you've had some good answers to this in the past. What is something cool, new, or interesting, other than your Hotwire course, of course, that you've recently learned, discovered, built, created, read, anything?
I've always been a big admirer of Rails and how 37 Signals tends to like write code. The Rails authentication generator is always my example, where it's like allow unauthenticated access and these class methods that get added, resume session and whatever else. Just the specific terminology in it, I feel like has always been something I've admired about Rails, and I've always wanted to get much better about that. And that's been something that I feel like as I've written more open source code, you can get by without doing a lot of that in your regular application code, I feel like. But when you start building libraries, that's something that starts to be really important, because you're trying to communicate the same thing to people that may or may not even speak English as their first language. So the terminology does make a big difference and stuff. So I don't know. That's been something I've been working on a lot with the gems and things lately, I get my first version of it out of my brain into a gem, and then I'm like, it still feels clunky. It's not as polished as I want. And so I've been trying to figure out those things and like the balance of in Pay lately. I rewrote a whole bunch of stuff because their API has got some breaking changes in latest versions and stuff. But even those things are tough to balance. Like I want to sync the payments that you've made, the subscriptions and the customers to your local database with webhooks so that we don't have to hit the API and our application can be way faster as much as possible. But syncing that stuff that is going to change potentially every API version, how do you write code that's not going to blow up all the time? Pay has been tough because it's like, well, there's Braintree and Paddle and Lemon Squeezy, and Paddle's got 2 versions, and there's also Stripe and whatever. And I'm trying to take these concepts that are sort of shared between all these APIs and abstract them. And I've gone so many different directions over the 10 versions of Pay. And the latest one was like, you know what? Why don't we just save the whole JSON blob from Stripe? And we'll like go retrieve the latest copy and expand as much of it as possible. One thing you may have run into is as I was building the Learn Hotwire site, which we may end up selling that source code on Sell Repo at some point. If anybody's interested, let me know. I've been debating if it's worth doing or not. But for that, this is my first time using one-time purchases with Stripe's adaptive pricing. So if you're in the Netherlands, you can pay in your local currency versus having everybody pay in my currency. And unfortunately, that means that Stripe's charge objects give us pesos or euros or pounds or USD. And so when I went to calculate what's the amount of sales we've had, it was like way inflated because it had Australian dollars in there and whatever else. And the exchange rates are hidden in the secondary object and the fee is called a balance transaction. So I actually need to calculate those. But then if I just store those in the JSON blob, I can go and select from the JSON blob, I guess, if that thing even exists in there. But it sucks because I don't have like just a column I can say, here's the US dollars, and just sum all of those like you would expect to be able to do. But then if you're building a library, this is a library that may be used by people whose actual bank account is in euros. How do you set the default currency? And then that's going to all be data coming from Stripe anyways. So as far as I know too, I think there is, if I remember right, you can connect multiple bank accounts to your Stripe account. So if you have US and European sales, it'll use whatever is the closest. So it might end up where you have euros and USD in the balance transaction. So you may never actually get what's that total sales ever, because it will end up being split up across those. So that's been one of those things where I'm like, I don't even know how to build a reliable library for this type of thing, because I don't know if there's a good answer for that. Stripe has extra magic they can do internally to build their own dashboards, and we can save as much data as possible, but then building these tools to give you some easy things to have just a total sales number is like, I don't even know if I can do that in this library. So I've been struggling a lot with that and learning maybe we don't try to build our, because what I did previously do is like we would have features that were general across all of them. Like this is the amount of this charge, and this is the amount refunded, and this is the currency. But then there were some other things, just like what's the payment intent ID? That's a Stripe only thing. Paddle has its cancel URL and a receipt URL and stuff. And so I was building these like one-off things, but trying to make it also generic. And so this latest version of Pay, I realized, what if I just don't mess with the stuff that Stripe gives us and we just store it and then just allow you to like rehydrate the Stripe charge object and do whatever you want with it? So if you want to build a callback to save the USD currency, you could extend pay and just always have a column in like amount refunded USD or whatever. That would work for me. But somebody that has their primary bank account in euros could then extend it and do the same thing, but for euros or something. So yeah, it's been one of those things where like you're writing code, but it's such a meta level when you're doing libraries that I've always been curious, how do I find a good balance of that? I want to do it to solve my problems, but I also want to build it generically enough to solve other people's problems, not just mine. But I don't have the same problems they do. And then I run into things where I'm like, crap, I didn't build this open-minded enough or flexible enough so they could even do that. Now I got to undo my stuff and then whatever, which is why it's went through like 10 major versions of the library. But I feel like I'm finding the balance more lately where I'm like, when I integrate with APIs, it seems safest just to say, hey, we will save the whole result and then you got it to use later if you need it. And you can change your code without having to like, oh shit, we need to resync 10,000, 100,000 payments from Stripe because we changed how our thing worked. And then you end up in that data migration situation where the code currently relies on this data. We need to change it to this. The code can't be deployed to depend on that until we've synced all this stuff. So you need to do a multi-step deployment process for the migration, which is also darn near impossible to explain in a gem. You're going to have to do this in steps. People, they just upgrade the gem and deploy it straight to production. So that's no bueno. So yeah, I don't know. That would probably be the best answer lately of things I've been learning of trying to get better at building code for those types of problems that is very as future-proof as possible, I guess. And that's just darn near impossible sometimes. I'm sure that everybody implementing an API wrapper for Gemini and OpenAI and yada, 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 all of those are going to end up being sort of consistent where they all have similar like prompt API endpoints, but all of the arguments are going to be a little different here and there. And then try and abstract those. And then one goes away. And then they got, a new version of this model, but it takes new parameters. And at first you're like, maybe I'll validate that you have all these options that match the API docs. And then at some point you're like, screw that. Let's just do a splat of args and just forward them along to the request because I don't want to have to go and update my gem every single time an argument changes or something. And like you learn those types of things over time and what works best for this specific type of problem or whatever. But that's one that's been a forever sort of struggle for me. And I always feel like I'm learning how to improve that and do it a little bit better here and there. And it's just tough to sort of model that stuff anyways of we're different because we have a Stripe account that has multiple products in it. Sometimes it's the webhooks all need to go to all the different apps, but like Learn Hotwire doesn't care about any of the payments or customers from the Go Rails app or whatever. And it's like, we should probably just ignore those. And then deduplicating that sometimes too is confusing because like now we've got same person paid for both products. We need another layer on top to be like, here's all this person's accounts and their total lifetime value and that type of stuff. Is like one person now has multiple Stripe accounts. They also have multiple accounts across our Rails applications and whatnot. So it's a fun challenge, but man, it's also very distracting from doing actual work.
For sure. Yeah. I think you guys actually talked about this on Remote Ruby a few weeks ago, but Andrew ran into the Stripe webhooks don't come in a guaranteed order. You could get like an update subscription before the create subscription comes in, and it's like, hold on, how do I update? It doesn't exist yet. What the Yeah.
I just had that with those balance transactions I was talking about. If you purchase something, it takes a second for them so the charge succeeded event comes across and the balance transaction is nil. And then the charge will be updated a millisecond later or something stupid with the new balance transaction. And that will be like the thing that actually contains the data. So I like ship this thing to start calculating our sales from the balance transactions, goes to production, and then boom, Honey Badger's like, you don't know what you're doing. Wait a minute, this worked just fine in development. And sure enough, it was like, yeah, some of these don't have a balance transaction for a fraction of a second, but you rerun that code after the next webhook comes in from charge updated, and you refresh the page and it's fine now. But the first request was not. Wait a minute, what is going on here? And it's like, yeah, another webhook updated and added this extra data to it, and now it's fine. If you hadn't loaded that page within those couple seconds, you never would have known this is a bug. And I was like, oh, great. This is another one of those things I don't want to have to deal with here. But sure enough. So I don't know if it's a good answer for that, but it's been some learnings and stuff that I've been doing.
Good learnings. Yeah. It is one of those interesting, like, payments have been solved, but they haven't. It's just endless combinations of so many different things, and it makes it fairly brittle to wrap your head around, to write a good test for, there's a lot. And it's scary too, because it's people's money. Like, you don't want to get it wrong. You don't want to end up charging someone $1,000 when you meant to charge them $100.
There was an old app I worked on once, and they were telling me that they had set up PayPal, and PayPal has a 2-step process where you set up the charge and you send them over to PayPal. They put in their account details, whatever, and then it sends you back like an ID, and you have to then confirm it to actually do the actual payment. And apparently they weren't doing that second step.
Oh, no.
So everybody thought they paid for it, and they never collected a dime. And it was like tens of thousands of dollars that had just never been collected. And I think they were able to maybe go back through and like collect stuff, but it was confusing to people because they were like, what do you mean? I got charged today, but I paid 3 weeks ago. Well, technically you never did pay 3 weeks ago, but trying to explain that to people, it's not easy. And this is the stuff that makes me feel like we're all excited about AI and everything, but like we still can't even make payments easy.
For sure.
The nuance to all this is still too complicated, too hard to do a lot of things. Even building front-end stuff with Hotwire or React is still really painful in a lot of places. And back-end stuff is not as simple as it should be in many cases. Like Rails gives us the best abstraction so far, but even it can probably abstract a lot of things even more for us. It still feels like very early days where like you tell me to go build something, and it's like there's still a lot of decisions I'm going to make along the way that seem like they shouldn't really have to be decided or whatever. But yeah, I think the hype train is left as people are like, oh, we don't need this many developers and we got AI and whatever. Where hiring tons of developers with super high salaries is not cool anymore, but I feel like we're still going to be insanely valuable for quite some time.
I think one of the best, job security is a thing here. A comic I read where it was a junior developer using AI to write whatever, couldn't figure out this bug. AI wasn't being helpful. So he called over his senior developer, and the senior developer is like, well, let's look at the code. And the junior goes, you can read code? And it's like, yeah. Vibe coders are going to have a hard time debugging their shit in a couple of years when they've created these monstrosities that they can't read or reason about. Even like you got to be able to read code, and it's important.
There's just so much nuance and details that matter still that it's going to take a long time to just skip past that, because all the vibe code stuff is just going to make assumptions for those. And that's not something you can legitimately in production, just can't do that. So it'll be great for lots and lots of things, helpful for debugging and thinking through stuff and whatever else. But yeah, I'm excited to wrap up a couple things and start working on these new secret projects I will have to tell you about afterwards, but they'll be out soon enough.
Good. Well, the questions are always the same. What are you working on? What blockers do you have? And what's something cool, new, or interesting? So the moment you have a new answer to any of those questions, you got the link. You can always schedule some time to come on and talk about them. So, which we'll definitely have you on again since you are a repeat coding coder. But in the meantime, where can people find you and your products and whatnot on the internet?
You can find me pretty much anywhere as excid3.com, on X, on Blue Sky, on LinkedIn, Reddit.
All the places. Yeah.
All the places. And you can find gorails.com, learnhotwire.com. I think GoRails probably links to everything else. In the navigation, if you want to check out Hatchbox or Jumpstart or whatever. Working on way too many projects, I think, is what it's
and adding 2 more.
Yeah,
you're doing great.
Yeah. A few more. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll include links to all that in the show notes so no one has to remember it. But appreciate you coming on, talking about RailsConf. I'm hyped. I'm so pumped and excited for the Learn Hotwire course because I'm sure I'll be back in Hotwire land after. Well, I'm actually in Hotwire land of the last 2 bugs. We did some goofy turbo frame stuff that I had to fix because the tests caught them.
Nice.
But yeah, I'm sure I'll be back on Hotwire land soon and ready to devour that
there
course.
There will be probably new things here in a few months at Rails World that I'll have to go add to the course, and always new stuff. But that'll be the nice thing is the goal of that course was like, just make the most comprehensive thing we could possibly do and keep it as up to date as possible. So I think it'll be pretty neat to have new releases of Hotwire and like, all right, let's take the project we built and now upgrade it to use the new features and stuff. So
that'll be huge.
It'll be a special course, I think, for that reason, because I don't feel like most of them have quite kept up in the long term like that. So that's our goal with it.
It's a great goal. Yeah.
All righty, cool, sir. Man.
Well, thanks again for coming on. And
thanks for
audience, we'll see you in the next one.
And at RailsConf in 54
And at
days.
RailsConf in Philly
minus
in
the time it took
however many days it is from when this math is hard and time isn't real, as Andrew likes to say. See y'all in the next one. Bye.